Hey, so this is Ken Finnen at Capital Advantage Tutoring. You've seen this video, hopefully, of or explain the difference between open-end, closed-end, ETFs, and ETNs, all the differences. But what really pops up a lot is the share classes. People just don't get it. Like they think it's a bigger deal than it is. It is big, but the issue is that they don't know how to make a decision. Like they'll see a question like this. They'll see a question like this. A customer wants to purchase shares of a mutual fund. The registered rep should consider which of the following factors first when recommending a share class to the customer. Okay. So they're asking about the share classes, not the actual fund, not which fund to choose. They're asking which share class. So we go through this, and we look at this and go, oh, well, I'm looking at all this stuff. Well, remember, the different shares are all into the same fund. So really, we'll come back and answer this in a bit. So let's look at this. Okay. So we're recording. Good stuff. Thank God I didn't delete anything, right? Okay. So this is it. So if we look at a fund, these are all the things that you're going to care about, right? For the actual fund, the fees, how much big they are, what assets they're using, what the manager style, kind of are they better than the market? That's the alpha, beta, how they do compared to the market, and the type of fund. Those are all set. That's the fund. The different classes are like different doors into the same fund. Remember that. They're different doors into the same fund. And it's not about the fund. When you're choosing what shares they're going to do, you're not choosing, oh, I'm going to buy this fund or that fund. It's not about suitability. I mean, it is, but it's more about their situation. What do they want out of it? So that's where the different shares are. Remember that it's four different doors into the same fund. So when you're choosing shares, none of this shit matters because it's the same for everyone. Whether you have A, B, C, or even no load or even I shares, the management fees are the same. Now, so like Class A shares, that's for someone who has a lot of money and they want to invest long term. Okay, a lot of money long term. Why? Well, they charge a sales charge up front, but what they do is they have break points, right? So the more you put in, the less they charge you. So if you're going to put in like $1 million, you may pay very little fees up front, and there you go. So the sales charge will be less. Okay, so if you have A shares, the more you put in, your break points, which are discounts, volume discounts. So the more you put in, again, the less you pay. And on the ongoing expense ratio, the 12B1 fees would normally be lower. So again, if you're going to put it in there for 10 more years and you have a lot of money, A is the best choice. But let's say you're going to put it in for a long time, but don't have a lot of money, and it's not going to be, you're not going to get break points. Maybe do B shares. They call these CDSC, or we just say in English back end. Okay, you pay when you leave. Okay, this is for long term, but not a lot of money. Maybe over 5 years, because they do charge a sales charge, but when you leave, not when you join in. So again, doesn't matter about the inside. It's the getting in the door you enter. So a contingent deferred sales charge means you pay when you leave. Okay, you pay when you leave. So you're going to go in and pay nothing. So every dime you have goes to the fund. Unlike A, where you say you put 1,000 in and it's a 5% sales charge, $50 goes to the fund, and then you invest 950. So you're investing less. If it's a 5% on the CDSC, the Class B, you're actually investing every dime goes into it. So you put 1,000 in, the entire 1,000 goes into the fund. And as long as you stay long enough, then when you leave or redeem, you don't have to pay anything. So they drop as you go. Okay. So if usually after the fifth year, there's no more fees. So if you're going to be there 5 years or more, but not a lot of money where you have enough for break points, maybe B's the better answer. But usually what they do is they turn the B's into A after a certain amount of time. The B converts into A. Most firms don't sell B anymore because there's other choices, but that's why you do it long term, and you're paying when you leave. Okay, so that's B. Let's jump to C shares. C shares, you're going to pay a much higher fee. You pay no sale charge going in and none going out, but you can't call it a no load because the fees are high. You may be paying 1% a year. Okay, every year your expenses are much higher than the A and the B. And in reality, the B shares are their expenses will be higher than the A. That's why if you're going to do long term and a lot of money, A is usually the better answer, but B could be okay. B usually has higher expenses than A. C definitely has higher expenses than B and A because you're paying every year. It's really for the short term. Okay. That's much more about short term. They're in there for a couple of years because if you pay 1% a year for like 2 or 3 years and then you leave, you may end up with a lower sales charge than A or B. So under 5 years, maybe you're leaning towards C. Like if somebody wants to save money for college and their kids going to school in 2 years or 3 years, whatever you do, maybe you do C shares. A is not good for short term because you pay it up front and you got to kind of recoup that. The no load, so no load shares, okay, are don't pay a sales charge going in or out, and the expenses are lower, but you will pay a 12B1 fee, but it's going to be very small. It can't be more than 0.25%. Okay. So remember, a no load, not every firm does a no load. So if you can do a no load, it's usually better because you're going to pay less unless the A shares has no 12B1 fee at all. Then there you go. So no load has no sales charge going in or out, but it can charge a 12B1 fee when you enter. Okay. When you go in every year, but it has to be small, 0.25% of your assets, or what they call 25 basis points. Now, some of this stuff I'm assuming you understand, right? I'm assuming you understand that a 12B1 fee is an annual fee for marketing and advertising. I also make you understand that you buy in and you pay the NAV when you enter, and then you sell at the NAV. But if you do Class A, you're going to pay a sales charge when you enter. B, you're going to pay when you leave. Okay, I hope that gives a little bit of clarity on the whole fund, the sales charge things, and what the different classes. That's what it is, because a lot of people run into trouble because they think it's much deeper than it is. When you're deciding shares, what share classes, you're going to look at what the person is doing, not the fund. So now we can look at this question. It's much easier to look at now, right? Because we know what we're doing here. So now we can look at the question better. So now we look at this question better. Customer wants to purchase shares of a mutual fund. When recommending a share class, what are we going to look at? Well, we don't look at the total return. We don't care. We don't look at the fund management fees because that doesn't matter. And it's all the same. And the assets under management. So whenever you're looking at shares, you're going to look at probably the amount of the purchase or what their time frame is or something. It doesn't, remember, when you're choosing which shares to do, which share classes to do, it's not about the fund. It's about what the person wants and what their time frame is. Okay, great. Thank you very much for joining in. It was a quick one because I know it's going to be in the quick topics. Please remember to join me every Tuesday and Thursday night, YouTube, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night.